and adore.
Suzy wrong. Joy Drive's film, TV and theatre reviewer.
Suzy wrong.
Thanks for the love, guys.
Oh, are you feeling it?
I absolutely feel it.
Oh.
We've got nothing but love for you, and you always present us with some very nice... Well, actually, nice is not the word for what we watched this week.
It was a bit of a strange one, wasn't it? We're talking about In My Skin, which is on Stan at the moment. Suzy, tell us about it.
In My Skin is a series from Wales, now streaming on Stan. Bethan is completing high school, learning about being queer, but her sexuality is the least of her problems. Her mother is mentally ill and her father is an abusive alcoholic. She's seen things that a child and teenager should never have seen. She's known unimaginable fear and she's felt incredible shame. In fact, it is that shame that we explore the most in Bethan's story. She spends virtually all of her time pretending to be from a middle-class family with healthy, doting parents. None of her friends know the truth about the trauma she experiences at home or the impossible responsibilities that weigh down on her. The lies are the only way she knows to keep up with everyone else at school. It isn't until she falls in love with Cam, the new kid on the block, that her masks begin to fall. Bethan's suffering is hard to watch, but the show can often be surprisingly funny. Stan calls it a, quote, darkly comic coming-of-age story, end quote. I felt a lot of temptation to walk away from the pain of it all, but the performances are just too good to resist. All the relationships are authentic, the friendships, both good and bad, ring so true, and I have to say the actor Joe Hartley is astounding as the mother who struggles with bipolar. The way her face changes so materially, we feel like it is two different people we are watching as she oscillates to and from her sickness. I think In My Skin reveals a lot about the difficult childhood some of us have had to endure. I, for one, had to take care of a mother who relied on alcohol for many years as she went through a difficult divorce. Watching another teenager having to be the only adult at home showed me the truth of what my mind has buried and forgotten. One thing I know is that you do become very strong very quickly. Em and Warren, I feel like it's weird to ask if you liked it. Did you find it tough?
Yeah, I think that it was a tough watch, but I also think that it was really powerful and it definitely is Moorish. Like every episode would end and it was totally captivating. I think all of the relationships that you mentioned were really, really hard to watch and it was very heavy in moments. But as you said, Suzy, the performances were fantastic. And one of my biggest opinions about this is I think the Welsh accent makes everything feel a little bit lighter. So the grandma would say beautiful and she would say that and I would think, okay, well, that was really tough to watch, but I'm suddenly a little bit transported because the Welsh accent just made everything, even the little funny moments, a little bit funnier somehow.
I agree.
Yeah.
I found it was funny, it was serious, it was sad, all in one. And I kind of, I don't know if I had that, what's the word, cognitive dissonance. I was laughing at things that I felt like I shouldn't be laughing at. And, and in some ways I was thinking, like the teacher, for example, I thought, well, this teacher clearly wouldn't be a teacher, according to our standards today. But, I was laughing at some of the things that she was saying and I thought, I shouldn't be laughing at that. So I found it really kind of dark, Suzy. I don't know if that's the right description for it.
Yeah, it's incredibly dark. And, but Em was right about the magnetism of it, I found so much of it so hard to watch because she was really going through it. And very rarely do we get a villain that is so sort of like purely evil, which is her father in this case. We are always sort of given, we always sort of taught to tell our stories in a way that give characters dimensions, and actors are told to sort of find the truth and sort of the honesty in characters, and then we kind of give them sort of leeway in the way they behave, especially in true stories. But in this case, there was just nothing good about that guy, and some of the things that he did was so atrocious, and it was really hard to watch. But then, in a second, the next scene, it becomes really charming and really warm, and she is so loved as well. So I think that kind of kept me in.
I found the dynamic, and I guess that this probably talks to why Bethan, the main character, feels like she needs to make things up and sort of actually totally create situations in her mind. Her friends, particularly in the first season and towards the beginning of the first season, because I know that there's also some really tragic things that happened to those friends, but her friends were so awful. Like everyone around her is just so terrible. Like, why does she even feel the need to want to please these friends?
I felt like it was a very accurate depiction of teenage life and school life. And I also thought, right, no, you're not going to live in your truth. We're so used to sort of thinking that way. But then we think, no, they're never going to understand what's happening at home. She's not going to be able to explain to them in a way that, that they will ever understand. So I always almost feel like that's the only option she has, is to go up and try to, keep up with the Joneses, as it were.
We're talking to Suzy Wrong about In My Skin, which is currently streaming on Stan. Em and Suzy, something that I did love was the way that it portrayed the strength, of a 16-year-old. And we've spoken, we're not going to reveal what the pressures are, but there were some serious pressures, not only with the family, but as you alluded to, Em, also from her peers as well. And I thought that Bethan, she was holding that whole family together, though she wished that, her father was dead, basically. And, she portrayed this fantasy to her friends of this alternate life that just wasn't real, just because to hide the shame of what the reality was of her family. And I just thought she did it really well. She was a brilliant actor.
Yeah, it was amazing to see, actually, where the strength comes from and how it sort of sits next to the shame,
The shame.
Sometimes you feel like, oh, it's the shame that gives her the strength as well, because she's so terrified that people are going to find out the truth about her life. So she puts on this sort of face and goes to school and be cheery and be the smart head girl at school. And you kind of see that, oh, it sort of comes from shame. So it's an interesting understanding about her experience.
And her best friends had no idea of what was going on in her home life. Even the teachers didn't, you could tell at one stage they knew that she wasn't telling the truth, but they didn't know that, she was the extent to what was going on. So I don't know, I enjoyed the show, Suzy. I felt really sad by the end of it, because I kind of thought, it's not meant to be, we're not meant to be our parents' caretakers, are we, until we're a lot older. And I just felt really sad at a poor 16-year-old having to hold her family together.
There's so much truth about that, because we can't expect people who have kids, just because they have kids, to be perfect people. We all want to have perfect parents, but the truth is no human being is perfect. And in her case, they are super imperfect. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But, but we can sort of watch it and think that, oh, kids do have to go through things, much as we want to protect them from the world. But, they live within perfection. There's always imperfection in family. So, sliding scale, I guess, but this is like the far end of that scale.
I found Bethan's, the main character's resilience very powerful and poignant, because there were some moments where she would have conversations with her mum, who obviously was really struggling, but her mum would say some terrible, awful things you would never. I just got things you would never want to hear from anyone, let alone your own mum.
And she didn't bat her an eyelid.
And would be back the next day and have, I so admired that resilience, and also her ability to handle that, or in her own way, I guess, handle that.
She is so strong that the whole thing about being lesbian at 16, 17 was not an issue at all.
Yeah.
Em and Suzy, and Suzy, you shared your personal story, and thank you for that in the introduction to this. We are talking about In My Skin, which is on Stan at the moment. I was going to ask you, though, what do you think will be the impact on her as she gets older? Because I was thinking, is she one of these kids that, is she doesn't know what love is, but she does know what love, because she's giving it back, isn't she, to her mother? So what do you reckon the impact will be later on in life?
Always the hard-hitting questions for you, Suzy.
I think that one thing that I'm really interested in is when you observe as a child, and for many years, obviously in her case, 17 years, of watching two people not loving each other. And they're meant to be husband and wife, they're meant to be your parents. And how do you grow up and invite love into your life? How do you replicate that, or run away from it as much as you can? But it's interesting that we see a short sort of affair with that Cam girl, and she sort of has no problems relating romantically. So that was interesting.
I saw some parallels with the girl she had the affair with was it Sex Education?
Yeah.
in the sense of that character was quite similar to, I've forgotten the girl's name in Sex Education, but I kept thinking about it at the same time. You know, the rich kid that's got all the beauty and got everything, the clothes, the nice house, and I don't know, I just saw some parallels there.
Yeah.
Or Poppy?
Poppy, that's right, yes.
Anyway, yeah. There were some parallels. I think there's always some parallels in like coming of age dramas / because I guess sex education is also a bit of a dark comedy.
Yeah, there's so much I noticed that so much of what we talk about are people of that age, that those formative teenage years. Recently, there was a great new series. We haven't got, enough time, but there's another show called The Sex Lives of College Girls. I would recommend that. That's on Binge. And it's like a new version of Sex and the City and Girls. So it's 4 girls, 4 women and their sex lives. And in this case, they're at college. And this is obviously for the modern day. And it shows us how old Sex and the City is. And even Girls feels a bit dated now. So I'd recommend that. And one of the girls is queer and it's a really good look into what life is like now for that age group.
Is it fictional?
It is fictional, but it is based on... what's her name? That Indian American, really talented girl from The Office, Mandy Kaling.
Okay, great, cool.
Yeah, I didn't get her name fully right. Sorry, but it's amazing.
Suzy, what are we going to be watching next week?
Next week, Single All the Way is coming to Netflix on Thursday. I don't know who the leads are for this gay boy Christmas rom-com, but Jennifer Coolidge and Kathy Najimy are in it, so that's certainly one to look forward to.
So it's called Single All the Way. It is on
Netflix.
Thursday on Netflix.
Yes.
Can't wait to watch it, Suzy.
And if you want to get involved in the conversation with Suzy, watch it as well, and then we could all have a chat. Thanks so much for joining us, Suzy.
Thanks, everyone. See you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday. Don't forget, we were talking about In My Skin, which is on Stan at the moment.